Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and today is Saturday, that is. And let's look at the date here. The date is the 16th day of November. I was about to say December. Getting a little ahead of myself here. November 16th. Going to be reading again from Phil Langdon's book here about the book of Revelation, that is. The title simply is called The Revelations of the Holy Spirit, decoded by Phil Langdon. The title of the chapter simply is 18, Lament, a lament over fallen Babylon. And the particular card from the tarot deck is this one here. The moon. And also simply is to do, looks like a scorpion coming from the waters, so to speak. Also a yellow and brown, but also the two pillars symbolically in here. So the lunar madness card of Terra, the moon, waxes and wanes as the tides of human life flow from this to that. Do one thing here, make it a little easier. It is from that to that, but also represents uncertainty, delusion, and even deception. It is essential to balance the magical with the mundane, the mysteries with everyday common sense. It is all too easy to mistaken synchronicity with self-fulfilling prophecy. The 18th letter of Hebrew alphabet is Tzadai. That's spelled T-S-A-D-I, and it represents the number 90. The name Tradik means righteous one, a leader and teacher of generation. The design of the trident is a yet on top of the letter Nun. One interpretation of the Nun is that it stands for anada, deceit and fraud. So I'm going to say something. I had a couple of comments on my videos I've done here recently, and I kind of want to make it very clear that there are people out here that have this idea that simply God's going to judge people, and they have this self-righteous attitude as though they know it all. This is mainly in the what I call the particular perspective that God's going to judge these people and he's going to blow them away. He's going to kill them. He's going to destroy them because they're not worth anything. And that's the furthest from the truth. God is not that way. Where do you get that concept of God being like almost as though he's like the devil, so to speak, or he's and that's, I think, a part of it simply is people read the Old Testament literally. I believe that simply is that these people, that their stories, which the stories are not revealing what people think they are. They've sadly mistaken this as a literal interpretation of God coming in and providing for the Israelites and simply destroying these particular people. And if they don't do exactly what God tells them to do, then God also judges them. And yet, they can't seem to get past this whole literal interpretation of Scripture because they're blind. They truly are blind by their own misunderstanding of Scripture. And there are those simply is that, they're going to, I talk to people here, when I talk to them, such and such sometimes in the past here in the South, it's amazing the concept of who they think God is. It's scary. They think they're the chosen. Do you understand that? They think they are the chosen ones. And yet their lives are a mess. They're filled with hate. They filled with self-righteousness. And so with that, they come with the concept simply is that, again, a presupposition that God is going to judge, these people, and he's just going to blow them away. They're not going to exist anymore. And the idea simply is that they don't agree with they don't even understand the concept of reincarnation. They don't understand it simply as that was taught long ago, thousands and thousands of years ago, far thousands. Yeah, what I'm saying is something far before this whole idea of Christianity being literal or historical. When I say literal, it's historical. It just goes in tangent with each other here. And so they have the concept that God's going to judge this people. And reality simply is that no, you don't understand. The whole idea of reincarnation simply is to give you another chance when you come back here again. In fact, it's God's goodness. It has nothing to do with God trying to quote unquote blow these people away or kill them or whatever you want to do. And I see this, and people bring this into their particular perspectives here. I've had some comments. It's just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're lost yourself. Do you not understand that? We're all lost because you do not see the esoteric perspective. What you don't see the mystery, you don't see the stories, you don't see the myths, you don't see the allegories here because you refuse to see them. You're not open. You're closed-minded. Open-minded people used to make fun of those people, such and such. Well, in reality, simply is open mind is trying to look at certain things in the debate and say, okay, is this right or wrong? What's the deal with this? But a lot of people are just simply close-minded. They've adapted the same attitude as their parents or their grandparents, so to speak. They've continued that prodigy of their lives. Simply, it's just like, for example, in the political realm, oh, my dad voted Democrat, such and such, or my granddad, it was good enough for him, it's good enough for me. That's a cop-out. That's a very poor attitude. Same thing with Republican. It doesn't matter. Political. In fact, to be honest with you, both political parties are a joke. But the idea here simply is people do not understand that they had this childlike faith, a childlike perspective. And what I mean by that simply is doesn't mean they're stupid. It's just simply is they're not seeing the truth, or they're simply refusing to see the truth. Maybe that'd be a better word. In fact, they refuse the truth because simply they see salvation as a gift of God. Yes, it is a gift, but you have to do the work to get there, you see. And that's what people sadly mistaken. This whole gimme, 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 gimme type of attitude. Or in fact, most of the attitude of most Christians are gimme, gimme, gimme. As though God is some type of cosmic Santa Claus, you see. So I have gone off on a little bit of a tangent here. I'm sorry, but I just need to get that off my chest because simply people are not seeing. They're writing on my wall such and such, and they're saying this. They're making a comment here and saying this. The Bible simply is esoteric or symbolic, but it's also literal. Okay. Okay. So which part is literal, which part is not? Okay. It's almost as though you choose what you see as literal and what you see symbolically. That's really a bad perspective, you see. And yeah, I'm direct to the point. I don't play games. Okay. Because I don't like being played with also, you see. So I know I've talked to Phil. I've spent time with him now nearly a year, probably near a year and 3 months. And he's the real thing. And I don't understand why people do not even look into this. It really actually the sad part is your own fault. And what I mean by that simply is you refuse to see the truth. You say to yourself, I know more than what you know. Again, this whole idea is that I know more than you do. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Why do you do that? But that's the way people are. They can't admit that they're wrong. They see themselves as, they know it all. In reality, they don't know anything. It's just like this. It's like, for example, we go to a restaurant and we call it a smorgasbord. We make basically simply you have a choice of all different types of things to eat, but you choose to eat certain type of food. For example, I would take me and my mom would go out sometimes at Red Lobster, and my mom would always order flounder fillet. I never understood that. I was like, why don't you choose something like this? You know, molly molly or salmon or tuna or whatever here. Maybe try it and see what you think about it. But she always thought, you know, she always went with flounder. Like, okay, and it was always cooked the same way, you know, fried. Um, and I'm not putting her down. I'm just, but this is how people are. They don't really actually. They think they have this tunnel vision as though they are correct and everybody else is wrong, or they adhere to someone that they hear on television or radio and says, "Oh, that's what's that's what truth's all about." But they've never done what I call a smorgasbord and look at things and see, okay, look at all these type of things and say, well, I don't know, this doesn't sound right. This doesn't sound right. Something, God's given you a head. He's gave you a brain. You need to use it. You see. Sorry for all the thing here. So um, by nature we have the misconception. This is back with Phil. We have the misconception that the physical world is the source of ultimate truth and pleasure. But the yud, that is the divine intellect, is added to none to teach us that the material world is ephemeral, I should say, and not the source of consummated goodness and joy. Therefore, there must be something of greater truth to focus on. This heightened intention is the essence of the society. Again, halfway through the third act, that is this third act at chapter 18. So we're in the third act. You got to remember that. The first act was the first, let me check, it was 22. So basically, the first 7 chapters are the introduction chapter, not introduction, section, I should say, acts, and that is concluded the first 7 chapters. And then we go from 8 to such and such to, was it 13, 14, was it 15? I get them all confused here. I think it's 15, something of that nature. And then your last part, we're in the third act. This is the conclusion, so to speak. It's beginning to wrap up. Everything's beginning to open up and begin to see. It's like opening up a curtain or a veil, and it's opening up to show more, what's going on here. So in chapter 18, we find a reminder of the Son of God and ascension, the greatest testimony of truth, making known his authority. And here it is, verse 1. After this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven. He had great authority, and the earth was illuminated by his splendor. With a mighty voice, he shouted, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a home for demons and a haunt for every evil spirit, a haunt for every unclean and detestable bird. Verse 3, for all the nations that drunk the maddening wine of her adulteries, I should say, the kings of the earth committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxuries. So another angel is the Son of God coming down from heaven with great authority in the illuminate. In other words, this is a time of ascension, you see. And the physical body, that is being earth, was illuminated by his splendor. End quote. At the level of the illuminate, they are the conqueror through trials over the physical body and its forces, thanks to the Lamb on the throne. And what does this mean? He's talking about the trials over the physical body. Well, the physical body is going back to it's what your urges. It's something that you have to tame. You see, it always wants its way. You see, and if you give into its way, you will not see the truth. You just won't. And we've talked about this before with the physical body, because it simply is a way you have to rise above it. You have to rise above it and realize that you have a deeper purpose than simply getting what you want or thinking what you can think. You have to be open-minded, as I've said before, and seeking out what is the truth here. A unclean, detestable bird is the blackness of the raven, an incarnated soul in corruption. In this case, the opposite of the bird of heaven, referred to as a social caste, is growing rich below the enlightened level. Of course, while in the universe, people engage in the usual fictitiously of life, growing rich and poor over time. However, failing or falling into corruption just because, hold on a second here, just because our elders are not looking over our shoulder is the first fall of humanity. The second is the fall away of Babylon from the conqueror in triumph over the automatic human system governed by the creator energy before the Lamb took over. And how do I say this? The body wants its way. I mean, it makes you a slave to what it wants. That's why sometimes we have the word slave in Scripture, because in reality, you are a slave to your body. You don't understand that simply there's much higher ways. There's much more out there than what you think. And I find people who are involved in so ridiculous ideas out here that they're not using, they're just following the madness. They're following the crowd. When someone gets involved in this thing, you see this whole magnetic thing draw people, just go right after that. And then it doesn't work out and they simply go somewhere else, you see. And I understand that in some ways. They're trying to seek things out. Part of it is growing up, because you realize you come to these people and they're lying to you, or they're making money off of you and they're not telling you the truth, you see. Most of a lot of the astrology stuff that's taught on the internet simply is just it's generalization. This is general statements. It's not specific. And yet they do that to get your money. What do you think? Why do you think they charge you money? I mean, let's get to the basic part. Are they doing that for quote unquote for your goodness, or are they looking out for themselves? Think about it. Verse 4, then I heard another voice from heaven say, come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues. Verse 5, for her sins are piled up to heaven. In other words, these are piled up, meaning all the way from earth to heaven, so to speak. Wow, that's a lot of sins. And God has remembered her crimes. And when it says something here, another voice is the Logos calling from the heavenly realm, now in the head, to quote, come out of her sins as angels, receiving her plagues. Its creation at 7 plagues, that is kingdoms, and so concerns the overcoming of automatic incarnation. And automatic incarnation means simply you will reincarnate again over and over and over again, which is the beauty of grace and goodness, because simply is if you believe what most of these fundamentalists believe, you're just one and done. In other words, you have one lifetime to get it all together. Think about that. Think about that. This is, again, man's concept of who they think God is, because this is how they see themselves. What I mean by that simply is they see themselves as that God would be just like they are, because they don't truly forgive others. They don't have mercy for others. And so this is the God. They create a God in their own image. That's what they're doing. They create this whole concept of what God is and says he's going to judge you and blow you away. Well, that's their own concept of the way they look at themselves. Probably a perfectionist lifestyle, so to speak. And so They don't understand. And all I'm saying simply is that the day of salvation, today is the day of salvation. What that means simply, when you come to the realization and learn more of this stuff, that it leads you to light. It leads you to truth. And the light is within you. And what I've said this before simply is that God, the package that God is not out there, it's here. It's inside you. You've already had the package. You just got to find it within yourself. It's not out there. Although we have images of that. Simply we could say a needle in a haystack. That's just a story that reveals simply it's hard to find. Yes, it is hard to find, you see. Because you have so many people telling you so many things in this whole world. Especially now, far more now with the internet than you was even 30 years ago, 40 years ago. You see, you would not have heard a lot of these things from the Eastern perspective or from another perspective somewhere else. You would have never heard these things. Or that's only because simply the opportunity is there to find the truth. But there's also, you're already lost. You haven't found the truth within yourself. So you're looking again outside. And this is just a way of trying to find out. Okay. So another voice is the Logos calling from the heavenly realm now in the head to, quote, come out of her sins as angels receiving her plagues. Is creation as the 7 plagues, that is the kingdoms, and it so concerned the overcoming of the automatic incarnation. I got off on a tangent here. Sorry, folks. Remember her crimes reveals that everything is recorded that has ever occurred throughout the universe until its end. From a zero-dimensional point of view, God knows all. Verse 6, give back to her as she has given. Pay her back double for what she has done. Mix her a double portion from her own cup. Verse 7, give her as much torture and grief as the glory and luxury she gave herself. In her heart she boasts, I sit as queen. I am not a widow, and I will never mourn. End quote. Normally, we would not associate with retribution with angels or gods, or God, I should say. The only spiritual issue is love, pointedly unified as truth. Nice and simple. But the Son of God is also the literal truth with flesh, and as such a perfect judge in physical terms. When we hear of giving her back a double portion of her own cup, it comes across as retribution and unpleasant in the simple view. However, a double portion refers to the double fall of Babylon, first in corruption during incarnation, then in redemption, as the ego and passive nature of Babylon falls for good as the reigning power. So what he's revealing here, Phil, is revealing simply is it's a double portion. The idea simply is the double fall of Babylon. Babylon is just a representation of having false teachings and belief systems in your own self. And that simply is with that first in corruption during incarnation, then in redemption. So these are, you have to understand simply, it's actually a way of leading you to the truth. It's for you to eliminate the ego and passive nature of Babylon. So what is this? It's for your own good. Medicine's good. This medicine is for your own good, you see. Verse 8, therefore, in one day her plagues will overtake her, death, mourning, and famine. She will be consumed by fire, for mighty is the Lord God who judges her. Well, that fire means simply is, what is that about? It sounds like it's the upper part of your body. It's not what you think it is. Continue. When the kings of the earth who committed adultery with her and share her luxury see the smoke of her burning, they will weep and mourn over her. They're weeping and mourning over her because of her whole idealistic lifestyle, whatever you want to call it, not lifestyle, but your whole belief system is built on false. It's built on false thinking. And they want to hold on to that because simply is, you see. Terrified at her torment, they will stand far off and cry, woe, woe, O great city, O Babylon, city of power, in 1 hour your doom has come. But yet Babylon means gateways of the gods. since the human body is just that. You see, in one day, Deus, that is God, meaning in one act of God, her plagues will overtake her in death. 1 hour equals 1 Horus, pertaining to Apollo, the solar son of God, who brings doom to any untruth. She will be consumed by fire, end quote. Of the solar forces now prevalent in the angel's body, the various castes of society are then expressed in terms of the variety of lifestyles and businesses they belong to, suggesting the great body of humanity is present in a single person as the body centers. Now, verse 11, the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her because no one buys their cargoes anymore. Verse 12, cargoes of gold, silver, precious stones, and pearls, fine linen, purple, silk, and scarlet cloth, every sort of citron wood, and articles of every kind made of ivory, costly wood, bronze, iron, and marble. Verse 12, cargoes of gold, silver, and precious stones. I'm sorry, I messed up here. Wrong verse. Verse 13 here. Cargoes of cinnamon, I should say, and spice and incense, myrrh and frankincense, of wine and olive oil, of fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and carriages, and bodies and souls of men. They will say, the fruit you longed for, is gone from you. All your riches and splendor have vanished, never to be recovered. The merchants who sold these things and gained their wealth from her will stand far off, terrified at her torment. They will weep and mourn and cry out, woe, woe, O great city, dressed in fine linen, purple and scarlet, and glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. In 1 hour, such great wealth has been brought to ruin. Every sea captain and all who travel by ship, the sailors and all who earn their living from the sea will stand far off. When they see the smoke of her burning, they will exclaim, was there ever a city like this great city? Verse 19. They will throw dust on their heads and with weeping and mourning cry out, woe, woe, O great city, where all who have ships on the sea become rich through her wealth. In 1 hour she has been brought to ruin. Rejoice over her, O heaven. Rejoice, saints and apostles and prophets. God has judged her for the way she treated you. So Phil explains here, who can rejoice at death? Only angels, because they've died before they died within. Again, this is the main thing I've talked about. This is what Phil talks about. You must die before you physically die. See, you must die to yourself, and then you have physical death. And then when you do this before this, then you have truth. You found the truth, and you have life. You see real life. You've seen the truth. Your eyes have been opened. And who have been through the Great Tribulation? Well, the Great Tribulation simply is life itself, just trying to exist on this planet. You see, it takes a lot just to simply survive on this planet day by day. That's the tribulation. You see, this is a hard place to live. And those who, even those who are wealthy, such and such, and think everything's great, they will still suffer death, you see. They have washed their robes and made them clean in the blood of the Lamb, the very Lamb as the Son of God, who is now going to throw Babylon out of the proverbial window. Then a mighty angel picked up a boulder the size of a large millstone and threw it into the sea and said, quote, with such violence, the great city of Babylon will be thrown down, never to be found again. And so Phil has a picture of this actually dealing with what we call the midsection of your body, one of the chakras. He represents it as sea, which is water. Okay. The lowest parts of it we represent, we would call the earth, the flesh, the fleshly desires. This is a song, was it I can't remember. Anyway, continue. A mighty angel is the Son of God, who in his authority Pearls of nature of Babylon symbolized as the desire of the red dragon. So the red dragon is the area what we call the solar plexus. Into the sea of that center, destroying the false and misdirected desires of the old, youthful, foolish mind. It's amazing how we can always think in my own self and being very young, simply, so we're all young. We have this foolish ideas about who we are and our desires, such and such. And as we get older, we're saying, what were we thinking of when we did this? Why did we pursue this? It makes no sense, you see. Verse 22, the music of harpists and musicians, flute players, and trumpeters will never be heard in you again. No workman of any trade will ever be found in you again. The sound of a millstone will never be heard in you again. The light of the lamp will never shine in you again. The voice of bridegroom and bride will never be heard in you again. Your merchants were the world's greatest great men. By your magic spell, all the nations were led astray. Verse 24, in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all who have been killed on the earth. And that is the conclusion of chapter 18. So we're going to end that again. I'm going to try to show you something here real quick in this book. And this is a picture of this whole idea here with your midsection where your solar plexus is. And talking about Babylon. Again, these are the fleshly ideas with your own your body, your flesh. You see, the flesh is not evil, folks. It's just what keeps you from finding the truth. If you can, quote unquote, control those urges within you and grow up, then you begin to see other things. Your eyes become open. You're not caught up in all this. And part of that takes place mainly, as me and Philip talked about, when you get approximately 40 years old. You suddenly, your eyes are open in some ways if you really are seeking truth. You realize this thing doesn't make sense. So let me explain that. Even in my own life, I can give you an illustration of that. Because simply is, I went to roughly seminary around 40 years old. Most people, students, when I was there, were much younger than I was, you see. Most had already decided at a very young age they're going to be pastors or going to be Christian teachers in a Christian school, or either going to be maybe a church historian or church history professor, or teach theology in a seminary or even in a college. And with me, it was awakening at that point. I had many things that occurred when I was 40 years old in my life that got my attention. And I'm not going to go in a lot of detail with that. I'm just going to simply say that was a growing up for me. I remember talking, and I think I may have shared this before, but I've talked to a few of my friends that were Christians at that time. And I was, I had come to the point simply something was wrong. And I actually got together with these people. Actually, all these were men, roughly my age or younger. And they didn't understand what I was doing. They didn't. It's kind of like simply as walking away from the church itself, walking away with its teachings. And I'd come to the beliefs, coming to the whole idea simply is that what I'd been taught for the first 40 years of my life was wrong. I had made mistakes, you see, believing in what they were teaching. So that's just what it's about. So we're getting to the next chapter, which will be chapter 19 in a little bit. Thank you for being here, and you take care.